Good morning and welcome to our webinar with Norcal PTAC. This is Marketing to the Government. My name is James Forrest. We also have Lenny Bean and Thomas Burns, all procurement specialists from Norcal PTAC. The two of them will be giving the main presentation, tagging off. So we're really excited to see what they put together. This is a really relevant topic to all of our businesses and our clients. And many of you who are not our clients or not even in our service area can also benefit from what we have to say here. So I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a big benefit to everyone involved. So thank you so much for joining. I want to talk a little bit about Norcal PTAC before jumping into the main presentation. We're the hosts of today's webinar. As I mentioned, Norcal PTAC is one of these lovely acronyms that you get in government contracting, but we're one of the good guys. We're the Northern California Procurement Technical Assistance Center, and we're not actually a government agency. We are a nonprofit, and we're funded by tax dollars by various government entities. But we are actually an independent nonprofit, part of a network of centers across the country. Here's our service area. If you have a business in one of these counties in green, these 15 counties here, then you're eligible to apply for our services. In 2021 alone, last year, our clients won more than $500 million, so $500 million in government contracts. So if you're looking for assistance in a variety of government contracting topics, you've come to the right place. So how do we do it? How do we help our clients out? With three basic core services. The first, I'll just get out of the way because it's the third one, but you know it because you're here. We put on trainings and webinars. These are always free, and they're free for anyone to join from anywhere. So you don't even need to be in the country. We hope to reach a bunch of small businesses who are interested in government contracting, but if you're just curious about the thing and you're not in a service area, you can join as well. You can find all of our upcoming events at norcalptech.org and clicking on the calendar. A little bit later, I'll be going over some of the upcoming events we have. And then jumping back to that first bubble there, really the bread and butter of what we do is one-on-one counseling. So procurement specialists like Thomas, Lenny, or myself can meet with you to go over really any topic related to government contracting. So market research, how to market yourself, preparing your capability statement, finding solicitations, preparing your bid, bid review, proposal review, compliance, really all sorts of things related to government contracting, not to mention registrations and certifications like SAM and WOSB. So the second thing we do is if you are a client, if you have a business in this area and you apply for our client services, we can set you up with a service that we pay for, but then we offer to you for free, and it's really neat. It's called My Bid Match, and what it does is it will scrape all these different databases, local, county, state, federal, transportation agencies, you name it, and it's going to send you a list of bid opportunities that match the criteria that you and your procurement specialist put into the system. So if it all works out, and it takes some fine tuning, but you'll wake up every morning with an email, and then that email may have something 0 to 50 or something like that, different bid opportunities. Hopefully not 50, that's probably too many to stay on top of. And there's a linked list of bid opportunities, and it's a really nice way of staying on top of opportunities that are available to you, so you don't have to spend quite as much time going out and doing the research, but which is also good to do. So that's how we help our clients. Like I said, everything's totally free. You can apply on our website, norcalptech.org. It's a pretty simple application. If you work with the SBDC Center, you may already be in our system, so just give us a call or an email and we'll get you started. If you're not in our service area, do not despair. There are 96 PTACs across the country, including 6 or 7 in California alone. So that second link on the page here, aptac-us.org/find-a-PTAC, that will bring you to the National Registry of different PTACs. So you can find contact information for the PTAC in your service area. So if you're in Sacramento, for instance, you're going to be in the California Capital PTAC. If you're in Santa Cruz County, you're going to be in the Monterey Bay PTAC, Los Angeles, San Luis Obispo, so on. So hopefully that's informative about who's hosting the webinar today. We would love to see you as a client if you're in our service area. And let's go ahead and hand things over to Lenny Bean, who is our longest standing procurement specialist here with Norcal PTAC. So Lenny, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, thanks, James. Yes, I'm Lenny Bean, and I guess my breadth of experience is in the federal marketplace. Worked for 35 years selling to primarily federal agencies. And yes, as James said, I have been around a while. This is our little disclosure. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about first the research of the federal government, which I'm going to cover, and Thomas will then pick it up for local governments, and local governments meaning California, where all of our clients reside. This government marketing research is pretty unique. It's a different market, but like any other new market, whether if you were going international or you're looking to develop a new product or a startup, what have you, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, and you have to approach the government marketplace the same way. It's going to take some energy to get it focused down to what you want to do in that space. So in the federal market of interest, the overall process we're going to talk about is to collect and analyze all that data on public websites. Everything is out there on public websites now. You want to make sure you go to .govs. There's a lot of .coms which will, obviously just trying to sell you their wares just to help you get government contracts and that. And some of them are very good. However, I encourage you to stay with .gov sites. They are free, and they're provided by the government for all of their agencies. So the first step is define your market of interest. What is it you do? What is it you do best? What are your products and services? If you were going to do your quote elevator pitch, if you will, and tell somebody what it is you do, what your company does, can you describe it in a couple of sentences that make sense? If you already have a presence in the commercial marketplace, you want to emphasize that. You want to emphasize that you do have that level of experience for your product or service. And if even startups can go into the government marketplace, it's a little bit more difficult. But if you've done your research appropriately, you'll be able to define your market space. And again, we talk federal, state, local, government buys a lot of things. So we're going to talk about those public websites. And what we really want to do is get you to really nail down your product or service you're trying to sell and the one or two agencies that are your markets of interest. You can't sell to them all. Even in the federal marketplace, you don't want to have to assume that you can just bid to all federal agencies. That is not going to, you're going to have to spend a lot of time in trying to get those connections. And then we'll talk about establishing those points of contact, who it is you contact first, and how do you go forward. So we're going to use internet searches. And by the way, we can help you do this. You do not have to do this on your own. You sign up with for counseling support. Like James was saying, we are a no-cost website to small business, no-cost organization for small business. So I'm going to talk about some of the ways you can do federal market searches. USA spending it's got 10 years of federal spending. You can search it by your NICS codes, your keywords, etc. You can do it by agency, by company, and then it gives you information, so you trends as well. If you're in an example, you're in the IT business, you're going to want to see those trends. Is it going up? Because there's 10 years of history here. Is it going up over the past few years? Is it going down? Who's getting those awards? What agency is buying that service? What are the top 2 agencies that perhaps you should reach out to? Every federal agency is required to have a spending forecast. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to find, but we can certainly help you find those. So you can see what they plan on spending in the following fiscal year. The USA spending, you can find out what they did spend. This is a forecast of where their focus is to spend their dollars. The offices of small disadvantaged business utilization. So every federal agency has an office for small disadvantaged businesses. Their job is to find small businesses to meet their small business goals, that agency's small business goals. So they're focused on that. But if they don't know who you are, you need to bring that into focus. So once you identify that agency, you want to reach out to this office and let them know you exist. So this is if you click on that web archive, there's a complete list of all of the offices of small and disadvantaged business by each federal agency. The names of the people are there, email addresses, etc. So you don't have to go chasing around wondering who to reach out to. I should also mention too that if you find there's a lot of prime contractors that also have small and disadvantaged business offices as well, because as big prime contractors, they have to meet their small business goals in order to get the prime contracts. Now, system for reward management, some of you may have already gone here. This is where you register to do business with the federal government. But also at this site, you can log in, you can search for opportunities, contract awards, and registered entities, other businesses. You can also search for other businesses that are registered with the federal government to do business with the federal government. Again, we're here to help. The SAM system we all struggle with. So feel free to reach out and we'll help you through it. Next step is this dynamic small business search. And this contains all small businesses that are registered in SAM. So if you're a small business and you're registered in SAM, you're going to show up in the dynamic small business search. Contracting officers, small business offices, and the public, other companies can go in here. Again, this is public information, and you can find other companies in your expertise, your NAICS codes, etc., to connect with. We'll talk a little bit more about it, of how to go in there and make sure your information, so it pulls your information from the SAM registration, but in addition, you need to put in your capability statement, your keywords, and some of your non-government certifications. You may have a construction license, whatever you want to list in there. So when those small business offices go in, you show up. If they go in and they don't see anything about your company that you've put in, they'll just move on. Next area is it's called Subnet, Small Business Administration Subcontracting Network. In here is where large businesses, they're seeking small businesses, obviously, to meet their small business goals. So you can go in here and search on those businesses, you put in your NAICS code and see if anybody is currently looking, number one, has opportunities out there, or number two, you're just looking for those businesses that do business in your NAICS codes. And in that information is detailed information on the person, the email address, and the phone number on those prime contractors. This is probably a better way to get into government business for a lot of small businesses, is to subcontract to a business that's already in the door and then build your company presence in the federal marketplace from there. General Services Administration. This is it's pre-negotiated 5-year contract schedules of products and services. There is a ton of contracts in this library. It's a good source of information for anybody who want to enter into the government marketplace, because you can see who got it, what their pricing is, what's in their statement of work, what they'll have labor, specialties, etc., and descriptions of what those positions hold. So it's just a lot of information that you can get online to figure out what others have done. One word of caution, the pricing is something that they negotiate with the federal government. However, that does not mean the federal government will pay those prices. They may compete those companies that are already on GSA. But at least it gives you a guidance to see what's out there. And it's a potential source of prime contractors to subcontract to. You will find, and so one of the things you want to do is you find some of those prime contractors in GSE library, then go over to the sam.gov, etc., and to see if they are actually getting business and in which agencies. In USA Spending, look in USA Spending. Once you've defined who that prime contractor is, look them up, see what kind of activity they have, and at least it gives you an idea of whether or not it's worth reaching out to them. So this is just a snapshot of the dynamic small business search. On this one here, just want to make sure that you need to keep your information updated in the dynamic small business search. If you've registered your to update it, you want to go to the SBA GLS system. And we can send out that link if you want. It's in eweb.sba.gov/GLS. And that allows you to update your information that's other than the SAM information that's pulled over. So it has all the SAM information, but you need to put in your capability statement and keywords so that when they go searching for you, you show up. Another thing I encourage you to do is look in your NAICS codes, look for businesses that are already in here. Look what they wrote for capability statement. Look what they use for keywords. What makes sense for you, and feel free to use the case method. Copy and steal everything. So this is the subnet I talked about. So you can then again drill down by NAICS code. So you actually can go in here and you can click on California and then dig down to see if there's any current opportunities that prime contractors are looking for in your neck of the woods. Or you can just look at go in the business directory to see what businesses are on this site that are looking for small businesses to reach out to them. It's great information because it gives you the names of the contacts at these large businesses. It gives you their email address, telephone numbers, etc. So it's easy then to find out who you send your information to. This is the GSA e-library I mentioned. This is where you start in that search field. And you can see there's a variety of categories there. So a ton of information here. A GSA schedule may be good for your business depending on what you do. But that's something we could talk about when we meet to make sure it's the right thing for you to go do. But definitely use this to find out, okay, who has contracts with the federal government and what are their pricing, what are their capabilities, and if they are a potential candidate to contact. It is far easier to reach out to the companies that are already on the GSA schedules than it is to start from scratch. They can add you into the mix once they get on been under contract, and it helps them increase their sales on the General Services Administration library. Not, well, not least, PTAC and James had mentioned some of this, our bid match system. Again, it's a no-cost service. We set up your profile using keywords and geographic preferences. And you get daily emails of opportunities based on your search profile. It searches federal and some of the local government entities. It does not do all of the local government entities, but it does a lot of those local government entities. So we have a tool called GovSpend that we have that we can then search in more detail, so we can get more detailed searches in federal, state, and local government entities. The GovSpend company scrapes every government entity you could think of in the United States. So they have lots of information, so we can look at contract awards, we can look for opportunities, and to give you a picture of but not just federal, but state and local government entities as well. So, but feel free to sign up and use us, and we can help you do this analysis and these searches. So how do you then make a connection? Well, you have all this information, you have emails, you have phone numbers. Now what do? So on our website, James had mentioned resources. We do have a resource for generating a statement of qualifications. We have a webinar and we have a template. And in addition, we could also send you existing clients' statement of qualifications, and it gives you an idea of how they put their SOQs together. It's essentially, it's a PDF document that you can attach to your email. It describes your company, your past performance, your codes, NAICS, UNSPSC, which the state of California uses, and some of the cities use NIGP codes, etc. And your key players, maybe just you, but a brief bio of your experience. You do business with people, not with companies, and they want to be able to see who they're working with. And if you have any testimonials, etc., you can put those on the backside of the document so that they can see what kind of businesses you have been in, what kind of accomplishments you have. The statement of qualifications has been used, well, it seems like forever in the federal government. It's recognized in state and local governments as well. So then when you're going to send, you're going to introduce your company, always request a brief meeting, 10 minutes to introduce your company. Always attach your statement of qualification. So you're going to send it into that small business office that's in the Department of Interior, and introduce yourself, attach your statement of qualifications, and ask for a brief meeting, and you're going to send it to that small business office. And then by having that statement of qualifications, it's a mouse click for them to send it over to the department heads that may need to use your services or products. Watch for, and once you define your 2 or 3 agencies you're going to go after, you've done your analysis. Now make sure that you track, and so you attend their outreach events. Obviously, a lot of them are online now on Zoom, etc., but there are ones now being held in person. And it's always good to connect through those outreach events as well. And then connect with those prime contractors that do business in those agencies. Send them your statement of qualifications, because those prime contractors have to meet their small business goals as well. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Thomas, who's going to talk about state and local.
Thank you, Lenny. Appreciate it. Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm sorry if you're picking up the sounds of a fire truck. It just passed by. Okay, yeah, so I've been with Norcal PTAC for the past 2 years. I actually come from the small business community. Been an entrepreneur for over 20 years and started several businesses, failed several times, learned so much. And now I devote my work to teaching others what I've learned, what to do, what not to do, and especially focused on government contracting. Next slide, please. All right, local government marketplace. So a lot of what I'm going to say is a piggyback of all the great information that Lenny just shared. I would just want to get you to understand first the size of this marketplace. So being in California, we know this is such a huge economy. I think it's the 5th or 6th largest in the world. So within California itself, the state, there are 233 state agencies. They all have their own budgets. They all have their own buyers and their own needs. And so that alone is a huge marketplace that requires a great amount of research. Same with all of the counties in California. So there's 58 of them. And within our Norcal PTAC territory, we work with 15 of them. And then the cities, now there's over 400 cities in California, but on our website, the Norcal PTAC website, we highlight 32 cities where we provide a link that goes directly to their procurement page. And then within our Northern California territory, there are 24 independent transportation agencies. That includes the ferries, the bus systems, the light rail systems. And so just giving you an understanding that when you do this research, understand that it's pretty huge. And so you do definitely have to make a choice, narrow your focus so you can do quality research. Next slide, please. So let's look at the state agencies and how to do a beginning way of doing marketing research. One of the first things I do with my new clients is I take them to the state website, which is the Cali Procure website, and we do what's called a scripts search. So the state of California has a pretty extensive database where they track all of the spending, where Lenny was talking about, they track the spending on USA spending for like 10 years. On the state of California, it's about 4 to 5 years. So they track everything from $10 on up to $1 billion in spending, whatever the contract is. And they track it. They track it whether it's purchased utilizing like a PO or an RFP or RFQ. And this provides a lot of valuable information, especially for those who have a product or service and they're not even sure if the government buys this, right? That's a lot of what I get. I get a lot of clients who they don't know if this type of consulting or this type of product or this service is really purchased by the government. A good test is to do a script search to figure that out. Also, the next bullet point talks about state contracts. So whereas the federal government utilizes GSA schedules, in the state of California, they use a variety of different state contracts. There's a contract just for licensing of software. There's a contract similar to GSA that's called CMAS. And the CMAS contract has products and services all across the board for a number of years where the pricing is set. And you can look at those CMAS contracts and get the same valuable information. You can understand their pricing, you can understand their terms, you can even see who they're purchasing or who they're selling their products to, what agencies and for how much. Master agreements are similar, but they're mostly geared towards larger firms. This is a valuable amount of information that helps you to understand how the state agencies buy what they're going to buy, because they don't need to use RFPs, right? There's many different methods that they use, and understanding that is very important. The last bullet is first policy agencies. So the state of California is very aggressive in doing their best to make sure that they meet their goals of delivering or doing business with the certified small businesses and certified disabled veteran business enterprises, DVBE. And so one of the tactics that they use is what's called a first policy. So currently, there are 21 agencies within the state of California where whenever they're going to buy anything, they first have to look for certified small businesses and certified DBEs. They are a good way to start your marketing research, to understand their goals, understand what they buy. And this link here, advocates at DGS, because the list is so, I tested the link just a couple of days ago and it wasn't really working right. So this is an email that takes you directly to the state advocates and they can supply you with that information. Next slide, please. And so here's an example of what the SCPRS database is supposed to look like. And what you can see at the top is you see department and purchase document. All of that information is in an Excel spreadsheet. So here, that's an example, that's the UNSPSC code that I used. You can also use description, you can use any one of those, but utilizing your code for your industry is a great way to understand how much of this have they been buying over the last 3-4 years. And it tells you there are 395. Sometimes we'll do a search and it's only 25. You know, sometimes we'll do a search and it's like 4,000. So depending on your product or service and within that industry, this is a good way to see just how popular, relevant that product or service is being utilized by the state of California. And because this is a downloadable database, you can have it as a document that is really helpful for you. Next slide, please. All right, so 58 counties in California. Similar to state agencies, meaning you do business with the departments. You don't do business directly with the county. You're doing business with a department within that county. So again, it's understanding the county's budgets, the department and what they buy and their budgets. And we mentioned GovSpend. This is one of the utilizations of GovSpend that I work with my clients on. We utilize this database to understand what does Santa Clara County purchase? What's their budget? And GovSpend is a great tool to help us understand whether or not your product or service is ideal for counties or for cities. By the way, I didn't add this into this webinar, but I did want to touch on it. It also focuses on the purchasing for universities and school districts. So if your product or service is something that's aligned really clearly with universities and with school districts, then GovSpend is a great tool to help you find those decision makers and understand their purchasing habits over the last 4 or 5 years. And finally, nothing really does replace the phone and email. I always advocate my clients utilize the phone when there's a phone number, and then you follow up with that email with the information and of course your capability statement. Next slide. And again, cities. So again, this is a great opportunity for those who are just getting into government contracting. I think cities, transportation agencies are a great way to break into the marketplace of government. The federal government can be very challenging because they really do focus on organizations with past performance. Let's say you have no past performance. I think cities, counties, and these smaller, definitely these smaller cities, give you a better chance to break in. And again, I utilize GovSpend a great deal to help understand the city's needs. Again, like you can say, less competition, less red tape. it can be, depending on your product or service, a little bit easier to break into government contracting, focusing on cities. So if you do your market research, it will help to identify what cities are ideal for your product or service. And next slide, please. And here's an example of what might be available on a city's procurement page, right? You're going to have a list of their current RFP or RFQ opportunities. Within those, you can click on those that, for example, it says Aquatic Park Bay Trail. Even if you are completely different than what that title is, right? You do, you're a consultant, you're in marketing, you're a marketing consultant, and you're looking for marketing opportunities, but this is something dealing with public works. You click on it, what it's going to offer you is actually a contact information. It's going to list some buyer or some contracting officer. That could be a segue into learning more about, as an example, the city of Berkeley and what their needs are, what they're looking to be purchasing in the next 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. And so there's information everywhere, and just got to be recognizing the opportunity to network and build those relationships, which can lead to future opportunities within government. Next slide, please. And transportation agencies. I really like transportation agencies as another way to break in the government market space. As I show here, minus BART and California High-Speed Rail, because those are huge agencies. Most of these transportation agencies are fairly small, and they buy quite a few things. And again, utilizing the phone and email to reach out and learn what their needs are is a great way to start the process of building those relationships and gathering the marketing research you need. Next slide, please. And here's a quick example, right? This is just a AC Transit, and on their, go back again. There you go, perfect. And as you can see here, they give you a somewhat of an overview of the services that they need. You know, it's not clear what necessary professional services means, but that's an opportunity to reach out and have that conversation. What are your professional services that you purchase? What kind of equipment do you buy? So if this is something that would be of interest to you, understanding this leads you into doing more marketing research with AC and other smaller transportation agencies. Next slide, please. And just final thoughts. We're about to wrap it up. We're going to have questions, a time where you can ask questions and we can help you with those. But just wanted to give you an overview, final thoughts on what we kind of presented to you today. And the main thing is, it is worth your time to conduct really good marketing research, regardless of what you want to do, whether it's the federal government, local cities, counties, states, transportation agencies. I don't know where you guys are located, but I'm experiencing an earthquake. It's over now. Next one, understanding, huh? Yeah, we just had what I would say was at least a 3 or 4 point earthquake in San Francisco. My screen was moving about 4 or 5 inches to the left or right just now.
I saw that. And for those of you who don't live on the Ring of Fire, then welcome to this experience. That's a day in the life of San Franciscan.
Day in the life of San Francisco. See how we handle it? It's just calm. No big deal.
He's just moving right along. You got to have respect for that.
Yeah. Understanding future buying needs, right? Doing the research will help you to understand what that agency's buying needs are going to be, also understanding how they buy. You know, is it really RFPs or is it more purchase orders? Is it more of a relationship where they can just have a relationship and highlight somebody, and because the dollar amount is, let's say, under 50,000, do they need to have 4 or 5 bids? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Understanding what cities can and cannot do is very important. So doing that research up front helps you to understand where you have the greatest opportunity. And again, less really is more. Depending on your company's size, if you have a marketing department of 3 or 4 people, and you have 4 or 5 salespeople out in the field, and you have an operations team, yeah, there's quite a bit you can do. But if you're a one-person operation trying to break in, or you have a contract and that contract is taking up 80% of your time, and you're trying to figure out how to get more contracts, you're limited to what you can do when it comes to networking, when it comes to just doing RFPs and that whole process. If nobody has done an RFP that you understand, it can be very time consuming. So focusing on less will actually give you a greater opportunity as long as you've done the right research. And James, if you want, I think that's the last slide, and we can have questions if you want.
Yeah, if you please enter any questions you may have into the Q&A tab, and we'll get to that in a second. We've got a good chunk of time for some questions here. First of all, thanks. I thought that was really, really helpful. And you know, I've heard it said that when you're getting into government contracting, a majority of your time should be spent marketing, which I think would make it probably grossly under by a lot of newbies who are getting into it. So this is really some of the most important work you can do as a government contractor, especially getting your foot in the door. Okay, so mainly I just want to talk real quickly before we go into questions about the upcoming events for the Veteran Small Business Week series that we've got going on next week. Starts on Monday with a veteran certification overview. All of the webinars this week are at 10 a.m. So that's Monday, October 31st. That's a Halloween one. So come with your best costume. I don't think Joe Moore is going to be wearing a costume for that one. I'm not sure he's a costume kind of guy. But we'll see. We'll see. We may be surprised yet. We've got a nice treat for you on Wednesday. We're skipping Tuesday there. On Wednesday, we got a nice treat. We've got a whole panel of veteran women business owners who are going to be talking about their experience on how they became successful as veterans and how that intersects with their success as women in the industry. So that's going to be a nice treat as well. Some of the panelists, I mean, these are pretty impressive folks. So I hope you join for that. We've got one sponsored or presented by the California Department of General Services, the DGS. I'm DVBE certified. That is the Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise Certification. Now what? So if you're small business certified or you're DVBE certified, and you want to know how to do business with the state, and as Thomas says, that's a lot of different, it's one of the biggest economies in the world, and a lot of different agencies going on there that accept that certification and are looking for small businesses and disabled veteran businesses to do business with, then please take a look at that on Thursday, 10 a.m. And then to finish it off on Friday, we're going to talk about maximizing VOSB, SDVOSB, that's veteran-owned small business, or the service disabled veteran-owned small business certification opportunities. And that is going to be presented by Donnie Williams, the VA. So it's going to be a great week, chock full of resources, mostly going to be relevant for veterans. So if you're a veteran, if you know anybody who is a veteran, please chime in. The webinar number 3 will be relevant for other folks who are just looking for small business certified as well. So don't be discouraged if you're not a veteran. So we hope to see you at those. Like I said, they're always free. These are all free. So we hope that you sign up and join and ask some questions. But right now we're in the middle of a webinar still, so we would love to hear your questions at the moment. And I see some questions coming in, so let me get to them. Phil is asking, I sell landscape irrigation control technology, but find it difficult to locate people within agencies who are willing or qualified to evaluate what I have to offer. Do you have any other ideas?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what you've done so far, but utilizing, if you've done the research to look for those codes, for example, there's a specific NICS code or UNSPSC code for that product or service. And if you do the research and you're on USA Spending, or you've utilized the scripts that I showed, that will give you a really good sense of who's purchasing it. So I don't know if you've done those things or not, but working with the contracting officer or the small business advocate, if the contracting officer isn't providing any information or you can't even reach them, then whatever agency you've been networking with, try to reach out to the small business advocate, and they should be able to give you more information.
Yeah, I would add to that to do some searches to see what irrigation companies are getting contracts in that government marketplace, and search for those. And you may want to reach out to them. It sounds like you have some novel approach for designing irrigation, and so that might be a possible avenue as well.
Lenny, are you able to start your video so we can see your face, or?
Isn't it?
No, it's it. You're great out there. But anyways, thanks, Phil, for the good question. Phil's also saying it's been a great webinar, outstanding. Thanks, Phil. We appreciate hearing that. Thanks for coming. Frank is asking about Caltrans as it relates to the presentation. Is it too big, or is there another system to log into? So
Caltrans isn't too big, but it is big because their budget is huge, right? Caltrans is responsible for all of they receive federal dollars, and they're responsible for all the highways, all the bridges, all the dams. There's so many things that Caltrans is responsible for, but that means there's great opportunity. So it's not just construction. They work with a lot of different service-based firms. So no, Caltrans is definitely an opportunity for you if that's what you want to focus on. And I would spend a great deal of marketing time doing some marketing research into Caltrans if that's what you want to focus on.
And just a little tip on Cal eProcure, when you're looking through skippers and through contracts, it's not listed as Caltrans. It's listed as the California Department of Transportation. So if you're wondering if Caltrans is somewhere else, Caltrans does have a lot of their own websites, but
yeah, they have their own data, their own websites. So I would go directly to Caltrans websites if you really want to focus on Caltrans. Yeah, definitely.
They are also listed on Cal eProcure. It's just if you're looking for Caltrans, you won't find it. All right. Thanks, Frank. Maisha is asking if you'll have access to the webinar. Absolutely. This is being recorded. You get the slides as well as video later today in your email. It's also going to go to our website. With government credit cards, are there any options for soliciting them? Frank has this question for us.
Lenny, I'll let you handle that one. I don't know.
Well, I'm trying to understand what you mean by soliciting them.
Yeah, well, maybe we can interpret the question as saying, how would you go after those smaller purchases that may be just purchased by with a
you mean micro purchases?
Yeah, well, it could be micro purchases in the federal government marketplace. There's really a couple of contracting officers that can buy helicopters with a credit card on an emergency basis, which is pretty unusual. But more and more credit cards are being used for not just micro purchases, but for basic, procurement of a lot of products, as well as some services. It is much more efficient to do it that way, rather than doing the work, submitting an invoice and going through that process. It makes it much quicker, and it puts obviously the cash in the hand of the small business quicker. So I hate to say it, but it depends on the agency. If there's a specific agency that you are approaching, ask those questions of those small business advocates, and ask them what their particular agency is using as as a rule for credit card purchases. But on the other hand, too, you need to be able to accept those credit cards, and need something on your phone or whatever to swipe those credit cards or to accept them.
Yeah, I would only add, if you do reach out to one particular city as an example, and they say, yes, we do credit card purchases within a certain dollar amount, it doesn't mean every single city is going to be the exact same way, or every single county or department. Each one handles things differently. So it's about utilizing that phone and email and really asking those good questions.
Yeah, it's sort of when it comes to local contracting, it seems like it's the Wild West. There's different law in every town.
Mm-hmm.
You really it's in contrast to California or the feds, where they kind of have unified websites and protocols. Even though there's variance within agencies, every county, every city is completely different. There may be different certifications, different procurement process. So, all right. Sefula is asking, I run a plumbing company. Any suggestions on the best agencies to connect with first?
I would look at the construction companies that are actually getting business on a federal level. I would look at the reaching out to the small business office of the Army Corps of Engineers for advice, their small business office, as they obviously procure very large projects through the Army Corps of Engineers. But that would be a couple of places. And beyond that, going to the like USA Spending and others like Thomas was talking about, and just put in that keyword plumbing and see what comes up. You want to find out, who's already doing business with those agencies, which agencies you should be approaching. It's going to, even, you think of it, oh, I'm just a plumber and that's it. You still need to do that research to figure out where you should spend your time and who you should connect with. If you're already a client, please ask your counselor to help you through that process, or sign up as a client.
Yeah, I would only add, I do remember one client, and the keywords that they proved successful was facilities maintenance. So within facilities maintenance, that is something that came up under plumbing, because it's it's indoors and it's usually, yeah. So try those keywords, facilities maintenance.
That's a good tip. Yeah, trying to find the right keywords. Sometimes you think you know how to describe your own industry, but it's not how the government is talking about it. So finding those correct keywords is key.
Yeah. By the way, I don't think I mentioned it, but for our bid match, we do have a tool that we can send you. It's called iSearch, and it lets you play with various keywords and to see what the results would be, for past opportunities. So then it at least helps you then narrow it down, like Thomas was talking about facility services. That is something that I would encourage you to ask us for, is for the iSearch tool. I use that a lot with clients before we set up our bid match profile, so that they can play with it, see which kind of keywords make sense for their business.
Great. All right. I got a question from Frank I didn't really understand. You're asking about DVBE companies. If you want to retype that in, then maybe. Does organization have a soliciting listing? Frank, I'm not understanding your questions. We can help folks get certified DVBE. We can help you figure out how to utilize your DVBE certification with the state of California. We can help you do network and find other DVBE companies as a subcontractor. I mean, you name it. If it has to do with government contracting, we basically assist with anything. Yeah. All right. He's saying thanks. Thanks, Frank. All right. I don't see any other questions for now. If you have any lingering questions or anything, feel free to sign up on our website for one-on-one services. The only catch is you have to have an established business in our service area, which is in Northern California, in 15 counties. You'll find on our webpage. I'll drop it in the chat right now. And another reminder, the slides, everything's going to be posted to our website later today, so take a look for those. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and hope to see you at future webinars. You've got our contact information here, so give us a call or send us an email if you'd like to hear from us. So.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks,
Have a
Thomas,
great
and thanks, Lenny, for all the research and work going into this, and thanks, everyone, for being here today.
You're welcome.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.